Wow, stories.
Am I the idiot for asking my wife to make me lunch? The short is that scheduling issues have made it so that I've asked my wife a few times to grab me something to eat from the kitchen between meetings, and she's upset with me for relying on her too many times. My company is implementing new software and a few procedural changes, and there have been many long, intensive meetings about this. Because of the nature of the meetings and the number of parties involved, sometimes it is scheduled at very inconvenient times for me. In a day, I typically have at least 4 meetings, which also means I'm also cramming in the other hours of work into the remaining time I have, still with consistent overtime. My wife Isabel has listened and commiserated with me about how rough these past few months have been. She's taken on making dinner most days, 4, 5 for the last month because I've been so stressed out. Several of my meetings have ended up being through normal lunch hours, and by the time they finish, I can either get a small snack at the cafe or another coffee, or else I won't be ready to eat dinner when Isabel is ready, either to make it or to have me make it. On Mondays and Tuesdays, I work from home because they're the outlier with the most meetings crammed in. Some of it is the new software, some of it is housekeeping, and all of it helps with the trajectory of the week. It also means I don't eat most of the day because I try not to ask for her to make me something I can stuff down my throat between meetings. Of the 2 days I'm typically home, I ask every third time because I try to grab something in the morning before my day gets going in my office to eat between meetings. But I usually just deal with it because I don't want to mess with her dinner schedule. Wednesday was unexpectedly a remote day with last-minute back-to-back meetings that in total ran from before my usual start time to nearly the end of day. So I asked her at 11 if Isa could make me something to eat as I hadn't eaten since 4 p.m. yesterday and wouldn't get the chance to eat until dinner otherwise. She didn't, and got angry with me for treating her like a maid. We had a fight where I relied on her too much instead of sitting with the consequences of my own actions or just making the effort to have food near me in time to be able to eat before 5 p.m./dinner. We've come to an agreement about how to handle things going forward, so long as this work situation keeps on, but we both would like to hear the internet's opinion. Edit. The final resolution is that I will keep some protein bars at my desk, so I can have something when I forget to set something up for myself for the morning. Like in the case of Wednesday, where I was already working long before I'm usually working. You're an idiot, even if your wife is a stay-at-home mom. My wife is a stay-at-home mom and I still make my own lunch whether I am home or not. It's called meal prep. Don't have the time to make lunch during work? Fix it before work. She isn't your mom or your maid. Be an adult. When she leaves you because you prioritize work over all else, including feeding yourself, then who is going to make you lunch and dinner? Figure it out and don't blame your wife for messing up your meals. Everyone sucks here. You are a grown adult that can handle preparing snacks and lunch to have handy during the workday. You can't keep a box of granola bars or something in your office? If she's able to, is it really that big of a deal to make you something to eat? To me, it sounds really silly that she'd be pissed over occasionally being asked to make you something, but it's just as silly that you can't be better prepared, or at the very least, eat breakfast. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for reneging on my wife and I's agreement? I, Pete, and Eve have an agreement. The agreement says that if one of us has a complaint or suggestion that we want to voice to the other person, we have to preface it with at least 2 compliments. So for instance, if I wanted to approach my wife about leaving her dirty clothes on the floor, I might first tell her that I liked the new shirt she bought, and that I appreciated how she did the laundry the previous week, and then I would ask her if she could pick her clothes up. Yesterday, Eve was making some oatmeal chocolate chip raisin cookies, a recipe that she makes often by stirring together an oatmeal cookie box mix with chocolate chips and raisins. I really dislike raisins. So naturally, I have never cared for this recipe, and I have even strongly implied my dislike for them on a number of occasions. But my wife never seems to get the hint. So yesterday, while Eve was getting out the ingredients to make the cookies, I started with 2 compliments. I said that it was a nice gesture for her to make cookies for the family, and that I liked how she cooked them for the perfect amount of time, so that they weren't too hard or too doughy. I then told her that I didn't care for the raisins, and that I would appreciate it if she made a few cookies without them, since the raisins aren't already mixed in. Eve adds them and the chocolate chips to the box mix. My wife nodded, so I thought that meant she was saying yes. Later, she announced the cookies were ready to eat, so I came over and asked which ones didn't have raisins. With a confused expression on her face, she asked me what I meant. I reminded her of our conversation earlier. Eve replied that since I had given her 2 compliments on the cookies but only 1 complaint, she thought I enjoyed her raisin cookies more than I disliked them, so she continued with the original recipe. She said they couldn't be that bad if 2/3 of my comments about them were positive. I was at a loss, so I just sat down. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how to articulate my thoughts. Finally, I decided to just go for it. "Eve," I began. But before I could continue, Eve interrupted in a warning tone. "Careful, Pete. Remember our agreement." At that point, I lost it. I stood up abruptly and told her I couldn't pretend anymore, and that eating the raisin cookies like this was unbearable, and that my feelings about the cookies were pretty much all negative. I didn't preface that comment with 2 positives, so I broke our agreement here. At first I thought I was justified, but I talked to my friends who told me that my wife doesn't owe me cookies, and I should just be grateful she made me cookies at all, and I shouldn't have broken the agreement. Eve is still mad at me. So, am I an idiot for breaking the agreement? Not an idiot. This rule seems like some bullshit from TikTok or something. You can't have a clear conversation if everything has to be sugar-coated. If you like cookies without raisins, just buy or make your own cookies, so you don't have to keep up this charade. They are ready-to-bake cookies in the freezer section at every grocery store on the planet. Everyone sucks here. I have even strongly implied my dislike for them. Look, if your agreement means you can't come out and say something, that's bad. If you haven't come out and just said it before, well, that's on you. You can't get upset if someone doesn't read between the lines. However, once you finally did say something, she should have listened. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for wanting to temporarily live in a house I co-own with my ex? My ex-partner, male 35, of 10 years, and I, male 37, bought a house together, 3-bedroom, 4-bath in late 2021. Everything was split 50-50 between us. We broke up summer 2022, and I left to travel as a digital nomad. We got a tenant whose monthly rent is applied to my half of the mortgage, and I'm paying about 1/3 of my 1/2 of the mortgage still myself, not living there. I have a few weddings I'll need to be in town for later this year, late July and mid-September, and it makes sense to me to occupy the 3rd bedroom during the time between. I have reached out to the tenant, who is fine with this. I would not be moving back in permanently and feel I am not a difficult roommate. The reason I want to do this is to save money on lodging during that time. My ex lost his poop when I proposed this. His argument is that it is bad for his mental health, and that he doesn't want to live with his ex-partner. My thought is that I'm simply staying for a few months in a house I already own, and it's my right to do so. I think the long-term solution is to sell the house to not run into this situation again. For the short term, we would work out whatever is monetarily fair for the tenant's rent during my time there. My ex has stated it's not about the money or me being a difficult roommate, it's purely emotional. He has responded with things like, "It's weird," and "It's a red flag to the person I'm dating now." Am I an idiot for suggesting to temporarily stay in my own house with my ex? Not an idiot. For no other reason than you still own 50% of the home. If your ex wanted to make sure you never moved back in, then they should have bought you out of your half. I can understand why they wouldn't want you staying with them, but they just don't have much leverage to keep you out while you own an equal stake of the home. Everyone sucks here. This is exactly why when people split up, you need to separate your assets. The fact you still own and are paying a mortgage on a house you own with your ex is mind-boggling. He should have either bought you out, or you should have sold the house long ago. Yes, it's perfectly reasonable for you to want to stay in a house you're paying a mortgage on, but it's also perfectly reasonable for him to not want to have to temporarily live with his ex for any length of time. Sever this financial tie with your ex. In the long term, you both will be much better off.